that's because it's 9:30.
All right, good morning. Today is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. We are convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. The time is 7:30 a.m. And we will begin with a roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President. Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
Nate.
Nate Bryson, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Rotell, Superintendent.
Is there a motion to convene?
Nate Bryson, Board Member.
I move that we convene study session.
All right. Okay. The first thing on the agenda is the NSBA conference. Coming up in April, we have the NSBA conference. We just need to kind of discuss our feelings about attending or not.
Well, since there was nothing on the agenda on board docs, it was a complete blank here. There's nothing to go on. I was annoyed at the fact that all 3 study sessions had nothing written about on board docs. They're complete blank, which I've talked about before. There needs to be at least something written about on each agenda item. The school district needs to be more transparent.
I was going to do that, but I have not been feeling well the last few days. But that's the reason why we held the agenda reviews. So
but that's not for us. It's for taxpayers.
Okay.
All right, we'll be back.
But I looked at the website for NSBA, and conference registration at this point is going to be $800. And if we would have done advanced early bird December 15th, it's $600. If you want to go to it on your own, it's nsba.org/events/2022. Yeah, if you go as a state association delegate or NatCon or Q,
which we're not.
I don't know what that is. So that means that we have to pay the regular price then. So that means $950. And the deadline for that is March 31st. And if you register online or on site, it's $1,100. And then if you bring your spouse, it's $100.
So for those who've been at NSBA, could you explain what happens there, the purpose of it?
Have you never been to one, Jennifer?
If you've seen benefit? No, the first one I was going to go to, then it got canceled for COVID. Yeah.
I've been to one. I went to San Antonio, and that was my first year on the board. It's a big conference where they have an opportunity to go see what's happening in other school districts around the nation and see what they're doing in all sorts of different avenues. And I think it's a great learning opportunity to see, like, hey, they're having the same problem we are. What are they doing? And how can we maybe take what they're doing and adjust it to how it would work for us. It's a great learning opportunity for us.
So think of USBA and then just kind of multiply it to like a national level. So there's classes offered, several different sessions or whatever, and most of the topics are going to be more of like national significance rather than state-centered significance. And it's actually, I've learned plenty of really great things at all of the conferences in the past. I've been to 2. But I think they're worth it for educational purposes for board members.
It's a good opportunity to also show our state legislators too that we're being educated and learning, being part of the board. And in times past, we've always said, like, we would try not to go beyond the Midwest and further just for cost reasons. So next year would be in Orlando, so there's a really good chance we probably just wouldn't go. So this would be an opportunity this year. It's only been, like I said, I've only been once, and that was San Antonio, and that was 3 years ago.
So we're definitely due for another educational
Yeah,
experience, I think, if we want.
I spoke with McKay yesterday. He said most of the boards in the state are going and are attending. So it's just a matter of how you guys feel.
Well, do we have that in the budget to be able to do that? It's gonna be $950 per person now.
Yeah, I usually cover it out of my budget or the board budget. Yeah, so we put some aside every year for this.
Plus,
And it's not mandatory for
Fair,
anyone
fair.
on the board to have to attend. It's just a good opportunity for us to learn.
Well, our first board goal is continuous academic improvement, which obviously is focused mostly on our students and our teachers learning, but I think it's important for us as board members also to do what we can to improve ourselves and be more effective as board members, and I think it would be a great thing to do.
And so the other aspect of this is that, you know, you can go as an entire board, or certain board members can go, meaning that certain board members may choose not to go. So it's very flexible in terms of what the board wants to do. There are benefits to everybody going. Usually what we would do in the past is, you know, after a day of classes and sessions, we may join together and have dinner and discuss what we saw.
I think there's a lot of value of those conferences at the times where we come together and get to talk about what we saw, what we're excited about, what we learned.
So, well, I think we should still continue to go. Like I said, it's optional for anybody on the board. Nobody is required to go. It's not. So, is there anybody else that feels differently?
I'm not opposed to it. I don't know if my circumstances will allow me to go, and I also, so I'll discuss it, and then I can just choose not to go
Right.
if it doesn't, if my,
Yeah,
don't
right.
allow to go.
the schedule at a glance says it's the pre-conference day workshops are Friday, April 1st, and then Saturday, April 2nd, and Sunday, April 3rd are the main days, and then Monday, April 4th, it goes until noon.
Yeah.
So we typically would travel on the Friday
on
morning.
Friday morning
and then travel out on
back
Monday.
on Monday afternoon.
That's what we've done in the past.
So.
Okay.
And in the past, spouses have been invited to go. I think they pay their own way, but they're welcome to come if they would like. So, okay, well then we'll just plan on that. If due to any circumstances, if you are not able to attend, just let Bonnie know. Okay, discussion on just Dixon Middle School, and again, Terry, we apologize that that didn't get filled in. We'll make sure that doesn't happen again in the future.
Thank you.
All right, the first part of Dixon Middle School is the meeting that Jennifer, Terry, and I attended about the first Dixon construction meeting. They mentioned to us that we need to figure out the new name and the colors, and we need to get that done probably by the end of February. So I'm just going to read you the policy.
Can I clarify something?
Yeah.
I don't think we've decided, is there going to be a new name?
Yeah.
Or
Right,
are
right.
we taking the
We need to
name?
do the new-
So we
the
need to
naming of the
decide-
school.
We need to decide
Right.
that, and then if it's going to be a new name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but I'm just going to read policy 6817, just so that the public is aware of how this works. This is, and then we can go from there. Naming of schools. New district buildings may be named after persons, places, or things that have attained national or local prominence or local geographical references. While the Board of Education may solicit submissions suggesting appropriate names for a new school, the naming of schools is at the sole discretion of the board. When an existing school is demolished and reconstructed, the board, at its discretion, may choose to change the school's name, or the board may solicit suggestions for a new name from the community members and select one of the names suggested. In doing so, the board may wish to grant appropriate acknowledgement to the school being replaced by ensuring that appropriate small display of history of the school including the name of the building being replaced, may be placed near the main entrance of the newly constructed building. When a new school is built, the board, at its discretion, may solicit suggestions for the school's name from community members. The board may select one of the names suggested by community members and may, at their discretion, select a name of their own choosing. So just so that the public and everyone's aware that that's what our school policy is. Thoughts, ideas of how you want to move forward with gathering.
We can just borrow what Alpine does. I mean, they name schools all the time, so.
I don't know what they do.
I don't know what they do.
Process. They usually put up a survey with all the, questions, name, mascot and colors, and then let people have an input, and then they narrow it down, and then the biggest vote getters, people get to vote on that again, and then the board narrows that down.
And that's kind of where I was leaning towards, was asking the west side. We can open it up to the entire school district, but this is a school that will be affecting the west side. And I think it would be great to get children's input on what they think it would be.
They would have a really good idea for mascot. It's always welcome.
They would do a great job on mascot. So what I think I'm hearing on this is that we would like to send out a survey.
So wait, really quick to clarify though, are we deciding we do want to rename the school?
Well, I think we can put on there as well, they could say they want to keep it as Dixon Middle School, and
okay.
You're the Dixon, what right now?
Panthers.
Panthers.
Okay.
Just quick input. I haven't asked my neighborhood, and I'm in the Dixon neighborhood, about the naming. But if you take the name from the neighborhood, you've not only taken the school and everything that comes with the school, you're taking our name. Something to consider. So I'm not necessarily opposed to putting it on the ballot, but it's something for us to consider. We already feel like we've been stripped of everything. You take the name, there may be problems. Just input.
I think it's best that we ask about do we move the name or not. We ask the Dixon neighborhood specifically. I personally agree with the name should stay in the neighborhood for whatever purpose that property is going to continue to have. But I thought, maybe that neighborhood feels strongly that the school should keep the name, and if so, we should consider that. But if they feel strongly, let's keep it in our neighborhood, I think that's the way to go. I think that neighborhood should have a lot more influence on that decision than the rest of the community. But then if we do change the name, I definitely think the whole west side should be involved in that process.
I agree with that.
The other
Was there a
issue-
timeline on it? Sorry.
They would like it by the end of February, because that helps them get things moving so they can start picking colors for tile and other things.
So do we have enough time to survey the Dixon neighborhood first? I've always thought in my head too that it makes sense to leave the name in the neighborhood as well. So in my head I've always just figured we'd probably rename the middle school to something different. So we have enough time to check with Dixon neighborhood first and then put out a community survey or whatever?
I think as far as checking the neighborhood, we could just work with the neighborhood chair, and they can get a sense of where their neighborhood's at. I don't think we have to go through a full.
Okay.
They might already have an answer, or they might say, give me a few days to email people and get back to you.
And that's the thing, is we can ask input, and there could be people from the west side that just say, keep it the same, and as we narrow it down as a board to maybe the top 3 choices we like, and then ask a third survey of which one do you guys like the best?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So what does the Dixon neighborhood mean? Because if I was going to issue the survey, first I'd be thinking, okay, I'm going to survey all the parents of kids that go to Dixon, which could be far and wide, whereas is it meaning that the direct,
There's
really limited scope of just the
neighborhood.
There's an actual boundary that defines the Dixon neighborhood according to the city. There's neighborhoods within the city, like I'm in River Grove or whatever. So if there's an actual physical boundary that they've labeled, this is the Dixon neighborhood. So that's what I assume who we would check with when we're talking Dixon neighborhood, right? Are we talking that actual
Yes.
neighborhood?
Yep.
Okay, as defined by the city?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that option may also be good, but you just said if we don't have the time, although I do think we can just talk to Benjamin and see what, get his feel. We can also do what you did, narrow it down, and then we can choose. I'll just tell you, if we, in my opinion, if we choose to rename, to take the name and make us rename, it'll be ugly. It'll be ugly.
They're already mad.
And it'll be ugly for me, I will just
Wait,
warn
you mean if we choose to keep it Dixon?
No, if you choose to take the name Dixon to the west side.
Right.
And
That's not
and
what I
that's why
personally
I was
favor
reading that
anyways, so.
policy. As a board, we can solicit suggestions, but we ultimately have that decision. So we can make that decision that as a board, we're not comfortable, we're gonna keep the Dixon name in Dixon and rename it to something new.
So I think either, Terry can have her input, I think either of those options would work. Going to the neighborhood and then putting it out there, or doing what you just said.
Just choosing, we're just.
And then
gonna
narrowing
leave
it down
the
to 3, and then we choose as the board.
It sounds to me like everybody here is feeling the name should not move with school. So maybe we proceed with that as we're starting to put a survey or whatever together, but in the meantime, we check with Benjamin and the neighborhood and make sure that they feel that same way, and if not, then we kind of shift a little bit.
I'm fine with that. Nate, did you have something to say?
Yeah, I agree with what Jennifer just said. I mean, she made a great point. The neighborhood's called Dixon. The school, we're not getting rid of the school, so the building's going to stay as Dixon. We might as well just take it off the table now.
I think that's wise, and I'm
I
fine
think
with
so
that.
too.
That's the direction I wanted to go anyways, so.
My earlier comment was going to be, depending on the decision of what to do on the current site, if you take the name and send it to the new school, then we're kind of stuck for renaming that site.
Right.
And it might be a good thing to keep the name Dixon for whatever goes on that site next.
Right, I agree. So should we just take that off the table then?
I think
We're
so.
just renaming?
I don't see anybody here in this room, including Nate, that wants to move the name. So.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
I have already spoken to one of the tribal leaders about the name for the new middle school, and she said she would go back and ask the rest of the tribal leaders for suggestions. But off the top of her head, she gave me a name, and I forget what it was, but the name meant on the shore, like on the lake shore. And I thought that was a good idea, but I don't remember the name.
So that could be maybe one of the options.
It could be one of the options.
Yeah.
But I really like the idea of putting it out there to the community, especially the West Side community, and
Getting
soliciting their suggestions of colors, mascot, and name. And then we can narrow it down. And if we then want to narrow it down to 3 and then send it out to them and say, these were the top 3 that we came up with, pick your favorite, and we can go from there.
I like it.
So we'll try to get something on the website this week.
And is there a way to like send it just to parents on the West Side, or?
I was gonna say, is it going just on the website, or are we gonna actually send something out and solicit, like actually?
Is
If
there
we
a
just
way
put
to
it on
do
the
that, or,
website, there's
I
no
mean-
chance it won't get enough traffic.
It will be limited to those families that we actually have in the system that have emails. And we've struggled with that before, but maybe that's been cleaned up. I can check with Eugene and find out if that will work.
Can we do both then? Could we put it on the website and send out an email to our families and let them know that it's on the website?
Yeah,
For people who don't get this email, you can tell your neighbors or.
Or through the text system.
I think the only challenge again is, there may be some people who won't get the email.
Right.
Simply because we don't have them in the system. It's their choice whether or not they give us their emails, so. But we'll track this down and see what we can do. There may be people on the east side who say, hey, I'm paying for it too, so I wouldn't mind having a say, so.
So that's why, so if we put it on the website, anyone has access to it. But if we
Exactly.
just send out emails to the west side,
Yeah.
right? Is that kind of
If
what we're
it's
thinking?
possible to even do that, I don't
Yeah.
even know.
I'm wondering if we could,
Caleb says he can do that. He's back there going like.
For our
this.
parents, we can send it just to the website.
yeah. I'm wondering if we could put on that survey, like what school boundary do you live in, or something like that, just so we get an idea. I think there could be east side people who want to participate and might have a great idea, but I would love to know specifically what
The
side
West
that they
Side's
want.
ideas.
So.
How long do we want to keep the survey open?
But we don't have a lot of time, right? Couple weeks?
Because we
maybe?
would probably want to discuss this at our next board meeting in 2 weeks and narrow it down to the 3 and then have it for our.
I say stuff like this, if they wanna weigh in, they're gonna do it when they get the email, right? They're not gonna
Right, and
drag it
I feel
out.
like we should consult you, Caleb. Can we have this ready done by our next board meeting?
Yeah,
Like-
if you're okay with 2 weeks for each
Yeah.
survey, I could even reach out to Alpine and get their survey so we can have a template to start from. So we don't have to create it all on our own and then run it by Ron and make sure that the survey works the way we want it to. And then depending on how quickly I can get that from Alpine, we could have something put together here today or tomorrow as far as the survey goes and get it out right away.
Okay. That would be awesome.
Okay. We can get that done.
Yeah,
Okay,
I'll work on that today.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, the second part of Dixon is, this is not anything set in stone. We're not making any final decisions, nothing. This is just to kind of get the ball rolling of ideas of how we want to move forward with how we want to approach the current Dixon site and what we would do with it in the future, how we want to include the community, and so forth. So this is more of an open session here just to discuss. We're not making any final decisions, nothing like that. I just want to hear input and ideas.
I think we should get input from the planning commission and the city council. That can be easily added to one of their work sessions because they know what's going on around the neighborhood and around the city, and especially in community development reports to planning commission. So that would be a good idea.
I have a couple of thoughts of things that can happen, maybe. First is the facility advisory committee could possibly be reconvened to help discuss and decide what happens to the building. And also, or maybe some kind of community committee. Both of those might be an option. I think either way we need to have community members on the committee when trying to decide what to do with the building. But I also feel like we need school district people as well. We have a lot of needs in the
It's a school district property.
Absolutely, that's
right,
what I'm saying.
And that's the other thing too, I'm open for suggestions of what you feel like you could see the needs for that building used to be. And like I said, nothing's set in stone here, but this is just an opportunity for us to discuss.
I think it would be helpful to hear from district staff, where are the needs, like we've said in the past, such and such is in portables, or this is like, where are the needs that we need a building or could expand something, or.
Well, there's a bunch of stuff we can name right now that we already know. We already know adult ed needs a permanent home. We already know that East Bay Post High needs a permanent home. There's other things that have been discussed.
CAPS could possibly need a permanent home.
CAPS might need a permanent home.
Yes, but is the building able to host these things?
This is all part of all the process.
This is part of the discussion.
So.
Isn't there already a program there that English is a second language, something
They
that
teach
is
at
already
night.
there?
They teach English classes at night.
Is that a
thing
district run program? Or is that? Yes.
It's a part of our adult ed.
Part of adult ed?
I mean, that's something we don't necessarily want to displace, right? I mean, it's already there and working well. We already know too, in the past we had talked about
Boys and Girls
Club
that come to us.
and also
a United Way.
United Way.
Didn't USU Extension also come to us at one point?
There was a university who was interested in this, yes.
And then I think we had already even talked about IHC having a center there. I mean, those aren't necessarily school districts, but those are good partnerships to have. I don't know,
If the law passes on full day kindergarten, that may put massive capacity
year from the legislation.
The bill as currently written would be that we need to make it available to anyone who wants it. So we wouldn't require everyone to do full day, but if they want it. So in some schools, we would probably have more full days than we do now.
So you're saying, Derek, that, so what would that mean for Dixon?
If they pass it, okay, and let's say full day kindergarten becomes law, what could happen is you start seeing more and more parents saying, I like this full day kindergarten thing. And now we have capacity issues across the district. So what it could lead to is an elementary that could be built to then we put in full day kindergarten at every location, but then also redraw and have that as a new school.
So the current Dixon site would be an elementary school, and then the Timpanogos site would that displace not displace, I mean, they're a block from each other.
So that's a good question. I was just throwing out, if we had that, it's something like that.
Or could it be like a pre-K through, I don't know, second grade school?
Well, that's
because I know at Franklin, they're turning people away for preschool.
Right.
And
I mean, I'll second the preschool thing. Let's turn it into a massive
Title
preschool.
the Title I schools already have full day kindergarten. And like Franklin, we have 3 kindergarten teachers. So.
I mean, even there's schools that aren't Title I that have kids who come full day, who come to both sessions. But if we had to if we put every last kid in full day, then we're short, 2 or 3 classrooms per school, depending on what they currently have available or whatever. So yeah, I mean that could alleviate some of that.
So I'm glad you brought that up, because that's one of my concerns. I know McKay's vote on site had something, I couldn't quite understand it, something to do with a K through 8 school, and so I want something really good in this building. But if we need it for a school, what's going to happen to these? You know what I mean? Like, if we put these programs in, and how permanent is this? Anyway, that's one of my concerns, is if we do want to use this as a school site, as a whatever school site, then what happens? Like, how permanent is this, and what are we going to do with that?
Right. Well, I think that is kind of the big elephant, is how quickly do we turn it around and remodel it so it's safe for permanent use? That has to be discussed.
Well, and then that will also determine how we remodel it. Like, if it's possibly going to be used as an elementary school or a K-8 school in the future, then we're going to remodel it that way, and not the way that would be for does that make sense?
Yeah,
They're different
absolutely.
purposes. And so, and then on top of all of that is, where are we going to get the funding? This is millions of dollars.
Right. Another option I was thinking about that Shannon Polson years ago on the board brought up the suggestion that the district office move to that building as well, and we could sell this property and get some money to help fund.
I believe her idea was move Timpanogos Elementary to the Dixon site so they have more room.
And then move the district.
And then move district offices to the building that's on a busy street.
That's been floated around a whole bunch. That's not a bad option as far as space goes. It allows Timpanogos to have more space, but it requires 3 buildings worth of, I don't know, change and whatnot, and it just
and money.
Money.
I mean, even if we sell this property, we're still
right.
But that proposal, I'm not whatever, but that's more money. Even if we sell this property, what we're suggesting is more money.
Right, because it's 2 changes. It's 2 buildings worth of change rather than 1.
And I have a hard time seeing the public supporting another bond, at least in the near future. That's just my opinion. So I think we're almost stuck here. No matter what we do with this building, it's going to cost tens of millions of dollars. And where are we going to get that money?
One of the things that exists at the current Dixon facility is a newer portion of that building has an auditorium in it. And I would be, as much as the auditorium needs a fair amount of renovation to it to, really function the way that we'd like it to, I think that could be a real, helpful thing in the Dixon neighborhood, to have that available as a resource attached to whatever school building we were to have. Just the opportunity for a neighborhood to have access to that kind of facility would be a good thing, in my opinion. But it also won't come cheap, because it will need to have a new lighting and new soundboard systems and those kinds of things to properly function. It's not functioning especially well right now.
So one of the questions I have is, do we need to, what needs to be done to the building to make it habitable for any of, even pre-complete renovation? What, because I've heard different things. We can't have programs in there even after the school moves without a full renovation. So I guess that's a question that I've had throughout the whole process is it inhabitable? Is it whatever the word is?
So you're saying, is it condemned or not?
Yes,
basically?
yes. So do we have to do a complete renovation like we talked about for the middle school in order for these
Other
programs to use it?
It'll require a fairly extensive one, because I know the boilers, like, they're really hanging on. I mean, those are not cheap. The roof is failing. Those are not cheap. So, I mean, those are some of the big ticket items, and so it'll need a fairly extensive.
And what about earthquake safety?
It's not seismic, so that's the other issue, is it's not a seismically sound building. And so, like, I was just in a conference call with the state, and they're taking an inventory of all the buildings that do not have unreinforced masonry, or that don't have reinforced masonry. And that's one of them that they've essentially targeted, saying that this building isn't really seismically up to code.
So until all of that's done, basically we can't put these programs in.
So I was under the impression we could in certain portions of the building.
So
No?
that's a great question. I'd have to defer to Mark on that one. I don't know that one off the top of my head.
Does anyone have an opinion on how that's going to go with the state? With the state looking into these buildings that have unreinforced masonry, and is there going to be any action taken? Is the state going to offer any assistance? Because there's a lot across the state. There's a huge portion of school buildings that need to be redone.
So there are a lot of buildings, and that's partially the reason they're doing this inventory, so they can go to the governor and say, we have all these buildings that are really not seismically safe.
Is this state risk management department?
It's a combination of departments, so it's like state risk, FEMA out of Colorado is involved in it. The engineering, there's an engineering team on it from somewhere. So I want to say 4 or 5 different entities as a part of that
The
conversation.
guy you've been talking to, though, does the risk, right?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
How long is that process gonna take, do you think?
I don't know. They didn't tell me. They just said they were in the
I
process of it.
believe we'll be moving out of the Dixon site summer 2024. Does that sound right?
Yes, that's about when we'll be out of Dixon.
That's what we're hoping for.
But in terms of their review process to inventory all of them across the state, have the governor make a recommendation, I don't know their timeframe.
So we have a couple years still before anything really would need to happen, even if we got started right away.
So speaking to our earlier discussion, one of the trainings that we had at USDA that a couple of us went to was about, what do they call it? SWOT. Anyway,
It's called SWOT.
It's about planning and using a certain way to plan. And what I liked about it is they said, let's get together as a group, whoever's involved in it, and let's talk about what are our strengths related to this question or issue that we have, what are our weaknesses, what are the opportunities, like things outside of us, like in our community that could be a helpful thing, and what are things in our community that maybe could be an issue where looking into this, and as we get lots of heads together, so it'd be board, it could be district people, community people, and we really just like, I think we're gonna need several times where we get together and just do with what we started with today, like let's lay it all out there, let's talk about all the pros, cons, possibilities, because there's so much here that it's gonna take a long time to really start to narrow it down and see what would be the best direction with the constraints that we have, but also trying to plan for the best possible future we can for our district.
So I guess my question to you is, if we go that direction, do we start with a big, like, FAC group? Or do we start with just within the district first to hear what their needs are?
That would be my recommendation. So let us put the facility committee together and get an inventory of all the needs that are out there. And then we can bring the group together and say, hey, look, this is according to all the needs across the district with this need capacity for, and then kind of be able to have that conversation with the facility advisory committee and then the community members, and then kind of start brainstorming through that.
So in the past, I just want to clarify, our facility advisory committee has been made up of both district and community. So are you saying in the future you envision the PAC as being more just district personnel?
Well, no. So we have a facilities committee here. So what I'm saying is have that facilities committee start, because it's our long-term planning, right?
Okay.
Start getting those those things that people have a need for, and then bring it to kind of like the facility advisory committee, which includes external stakeholders also.
Okay.
So that way we have a comprehensive list of everything.
Okay, and if we're going to reconvene that, the community-wide facility advisory committee, do we want to do it in the same way we did last time? 2 reps from every elementary, or do we want to reconsider how it happens? It just becomes a pretty large group. Last time we had some really large, I don't know, needs, but where it's just the one school, do we feel like we need that big of a group?
Probably not.
It almost feels like it's overkill a little
Well,
bit, but I don't want to
well,
exclude anyone. I don't want anyone to feel like we're
However,
trying to
2
exclude
people from Canyon Crest trying to decide what to do with Dixon, that's not necessary.
But I also see it as trying to decide the needs in all of our districts could come from anywhere in our district.
Because if something like CAPS were to go in that,
Yeah.
that affects the entire district.
The other issue is if we do decide we need to bond in order to, reconstruct, then it's going to involve every taxpayer.
That's a citywide.
I think it would be good to involve community members from throughout the district. I also think, so with the facility advisory committee, I've only been a part of that as a community member, not on the board, so I don't know what happened from the board side that maybe we didn't see, but it felt like that was community members came together, they came up with ideas, they presented it to the board, and the board
Yes.
was either like yes or no.
Right, this needs to be different.
I feel like as a board, we want to be involved in that brainstorming too, so I don't know.
I think there were like 2 of us that went and attended. Like any of us could go attend.
We went and
Right.
attended them all,
But
yeah,
we
but we didn't vote.
We didn't vote, and we were like more listening. We weren't there to like sway anybody or to talk to anybody.
Sure. And as I'm processing, I don't know what the right answer is, but I'm thinking like, I mean, we maybe need to have a thing where it's us doing some of this, like let's put out our ideas, and then maybe we could take that to the facility advisory committee and say, here's what the district says are all the possibilities, here's kind of some of the things the board's like, what about this, what about that? Now, we'd love you to weigh in too, but then we as a board have that opportunity to really wrestle with this ourselves too. Because it's a huge decision. I think we need as many people really thinking about this and wrestling with it.
So do we want to separate and have a community committee and a board committee and a district committee? Do we want everyone to work together? Do we want in some?
Nate?
Some of it's a little bit of the chicken and an egg thing, because if, let's say we just want to generate revenue so we can help repair the building in the future, then we don't really want to involve the community because we just need the best tenants. Now, if we want to just turn it over to the community to pick a building, that's another issue. But I think we need to decide what we want to do before we decide to involve the community. At least get a basic idea. I mean, if we're just selecting tenants, yeah, let's turn that over to the community. But if our focus is revenue, let's decide it ourselves.
Our focus is not
Did I
revenue,
break
right?
up?
No, you're there.
No, we're all sitting
thinking.
here thinking.
processing.
I don't see it, our focus as revenue. We're not trying to make money off of it, right? I feel like we have enough district needs that we could fill that building in a heartbeat right now.
But can we afford to fill that building?
Right, okay.
It just seemed like when we talked about it 2 years ago, we were going to rent it to like 3 different entities. We were going to generate enough money that it could keep the building going and maybe save a little bit for renovations. And that was kind of what we had talked about before. And if we decide to do anything and use that school now, it just seems like it's going to cost us too much money. Or what was even the point of the move? I mean, I know we have to move, but if we're just going to use the building and put all the money into rehabilitating the building, we're kind of back to where we were at square one.
Could we take some time at our end of February meeting, our extended day study session?
You can say the word retreat.
It's not a
maybe-
retreat, I'm trying to rename it.
Yes, please rename it.
I'm trying to rename it.
Unless
Should we call it the torturous meeting? Like we,
Anyway,
we
could
want to
we
we want to be
take,
honest here.
An hour and a half, starting to like really, I mean, I don't know, I guess we first need that list from the facility committee.
I think that's really where we need to go, is here. Let the school district really come up with what their top needs are. They know that, like, I mean, we have the Grandview site, we also have the Dixon site. We have, like, let them come to us, and then as a board, then go from there. And that might, and we've got till summer of 2024 before we can even do anything with this, but we do need to get the ball rolling if there's anything.
I seem to remember Mark saying that any change of use would require a complete renovation, but I think we probably want to go back and recheck that. I think my question here is more about timing. With the school year potentially coming to a close here, not too far away from when we could start this, when are you thinking that we would maybe like to get the FAC underway? Are we talking about next fall, or are we talking about something sooner? And this is on the agenda today because I think we owe it to the community to let them know that we're thinking about it and we want to come up with a viable solution. But
So if we want to get district input first, right? How much time do we need for that?
well, timing is interesting because just yesterday in council meeting we talked about this with Mark and we put together a list. We did not put it in priority order, but we did identify all of the things that we think are kind of orphans right now. They need a home, or they need a long-term home. So I think we're not far away from having the initial list together, but then for the board to vet that would be important as well.
Maybe the fall makes sense to me then, gives us enough time to check with the district, discuss amongst ourselves, and then go out to the community in the fall. And that timeline makes sense, and that's not too late. We still have plenty of time if we start.
I think that's reasonable because, one, we're not in a super big rush. We do have 3 construction projects already in process. We're starting the budget season. So I think for terms of just capacity, that's, I think, an ideal target.
So I don't live in the neighborhood, but I have had conversations with a number of individuals, and both in the Dixon neighborhood and out just on the west side. I think one of the big ideas that's still hanging out there is this sense of, do I want to say doubt, or question about whether the district is thinking about selling that property. And I think it may be valuable for board members to just publicly weigh in on that, not in terms of a vote, but just to say what you're thinking along that line. I know that I have not been directed by any board member to pursue a sale of that property, and I haven't even had it intimated to me to do that. last X number of years, so.
Well, it didn't even come up as one of the viable options that we even were considering, even in this meeting.
But I'll say it out loud again, I don't wanna sell the building, I wanna keep it.
So, to give you some insight, because I am in that neighborhood, and I've lived there most of my life, part of the problem isn't that we don't think that the board wants to keep the building. Part of the problem is we don't know how you're gonna come up with the money to do it, and with construction costs and everything skyrocketing, we're behind. We're gonna be behind. Everything that we've already funded, due to no fault of our own, admittedly, we are behind. And to get Dixon up and running to something that will be, for the school district to get something up and running, that would be beneficial to the community is going to cost money. And we don't feel that we are a priority to the district. Period, the end. We're not a priority. And so if it comes up that we need money, and it's gonna cost us tens of millions of dollars to redo that building, what's the first building that's gonna go? Maybe this one, or maybe Dixon. And so while I don't feel that, and I haven't felt from any member of the district or of the school board that that's what we wanna do is sell it, what are our other options? We don't have very many options except a bond, and the public does not trust us. They don't trust us. We're not gonna pass a bond, in my opinion. And so where's this money gonna come from? Something that we can do, that we can strong arm through, which is to sell the property. That is where, anyway, from my perspective, that is where a lot of the angst is coming from. We've been overlooked, we've been not listened to. Why would the district listen to us now when we have so many needs and this property can bring in some money? That's where it's coming from. Just some insight for you guys. And Terry, I don't know if you have.
Yeah, you ignored our opinion, so why should we trust you? You basically said, you mean?
Well, we gotta remedy that somehow, because no one's gonna make progress if no one trusts anyone. And this is what I feel like we're trying to do. We're trying to establish that. We don't wanna sell it, we do wanna renovate it. Even if this is my personal opinion, even if it costs money, I'm willing to go out for it and try for it and get what we need to put the building into use. And we have enough needs in the district that are valid. I don't know if the public will support it, but I'll try my darndest to get it done.
And what if the public doesn't support it? Then what happens? If we can't get a bond passed, what happens to that building? That's my concern.
I mean, there's possibility of an MBA, but I don't know if we'd be maxed out or not.
We could still go more.
So we have some money there.
So this makes me think of something else we will need to add to our list of things to consider is, with whatever we do with that property, do we start with a clean building or do we remodel at least the historical portion, right? And that's gonna cost even more money. And I think about what they did with the city library and how community organized themselves and got some money for that renovation. And so I think we need to figure out what people would want to do, and if there's enough desire for that, I think, how can we get the community to rally our entire city? If the whole city is rallied, like we want to save this part of the building, let's put some money behind it, then I think that's going to show right there that we're all committed to keeping this beautiful building, this property, and moving forward on it, and getting support for whatever we need to do with it, even if it is another bond or something. So I am committed to making this a great asset for our district and for the neighborhood there, and that has been my intention all along. I know not everyone agreed with the vote I made to vote for the middle school students to move out of there, but that does not mean that I don't want it to be a wonderful thing for the neighborhood and for our district. It's just having a different purpose now.
So here's I feel like I'm Debbie Downer. but I want the board to have a realistic opinion, I think, of what, at least from the perspective of the neighborhood where the school is currently located. What I'm concerned about with that is I am all for that. I would love to rehab the building and keep the original building. If we can't have the school, that's what I want. I want to rehab that building and let's make it useful for, not just for our community. I think it would be great for my community, but for the district as a whole. Let's be honest, the whole district funds this building, not just my community. But I'm worried that the fundraising that we would do, and I'm all for fundraising, that we told a group of people who have really good capacity to fundraise, they're our best, at least the ones of the community ones, they're very good at fundraising. We told them, no, you can't have what you want, but will you please fundraise for what we want? I don't want that.
Definitely.
I think that's not a good idea. So if we can have other people fundraise, that's fantastic. But I don't think we should go back to the people in the Dixon neighborhood who have that capacity and say, we shot down what you really want, what you think is best for your community, but now you need to fundraise for our vision for your community. I think that is a bad idea. That's just my concern on that.
That's fine, no one has to participate that doesn't want to.
Okay.
Yeah.
No one,
Yeah.
we're not gonna force anyone to fundraise anything they don't want. We're not gonna force anyone to do anything they're not invested in, and that's fine.
Yeah, and sorry if it came across that way, I didn't mean it that way. I guess I was citing previous conversations we've had as a board when we were talking, what are we doing with the property? If we were going to remodel the portion, that's gonna cost extra money, and a lot of board members were like, I don't know that it's worth the board paying for that money, or the district paying that, taxpayers, but, you know, we did cite that library example, and if we had that money in other ways, it would be more likely we could remodel that portion.
And
I'm trying to say.
No, and I am on board
with
with that, as long as we're not going to my neighborhood, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, you're just saying, you're like, don't put the Dixon neighbor in
Correct.
charge of
Correct.
fundraising.
Yes.
Don't
That's
put
what
it
I'm
in the burden of the Dixon neighborhood.
Well, what
or
I-
the surrounding neighborhood.
That's totally fine, yeah.
No,
That's never been anyone's intention. That's never been anyone's intention, I don't think, ever from the beginning. We
And-
will decide what happens, and then we'll invite anyone to join us who wants to. I will work my butt off to keep that building where it is and to get it to be something really awesome for the district. And anyone who wants to join us can come join forces. We could all be stubborn and keep pointing fingers and alienate each other, and that's fine too. That may be how this goes. I'm really not interested in doing that. I'm interested in working with whoever wants to help to get the building renovated and put back into use. That makes sense. So,
But if you want the community, especially those who live around Dixon, involved, you better ask them their opinion and
Okay.
do what they want.
okay, hold on
Because
there.
otherwise,
But
they're
we
not,
we can't be held
otherwise
hostage
they're
to people
not
that
going to be involved.
That's totally
and
fine.
they will hate the school district forever.
Look, here's the thing, Carrie. I'm just going to say some honest words right now. The Dixon neighborhood already hates the board. We're very clear on this. There's a lot of angst or whatever. Okay, that's fine. We're not trying to perpetuate that, but if we keep sitting here saying, these guys hate us and these guys hate us and no one trusts us, then we are not going to get anywhere. So we have established that everyone doesn't trust anyone else and that every neighborhood hates the district. We get it. Now, let's do something to move forward. Let's do something. This is what everyone keeps saying. Let's do that. Let's put the facility together. I promise to listen to everyone. That doesn't mean that I promise to do what they demand of me. That's different. Listening is not the same as taking action. As a board, and you know this because you're a board member, I cannot satisfy every demand that's out there. I simply physically can't. Because every demand just simply is in conflict with every other demand. So if you want me to promise that I'm going to do what the Dixon neighborhood wants, I cannot promise that. I will not promise that. I will promise to listen to everything, and then I will promise to do what I feel is best for the district. Okay? So, I mean, that's what I'm going to promise to do. And then, if everyone still hates that, that's fine. But I don't know where to go if we're going to still stand here saying, you hate us, you don't trust us. We know that. We're trying to overcome that right now. That's what we're trying to overcome. We're trying to do it. It's gonna take time, it's gonna take a lot of patience on everyone's part, and it's gonna take some people stop being so stubborn and saying, well, you didn't listen to me last time. I know we didn't. We all had to make a choice. Everybody had to make a choice. It was a sucky choice to make. You know that, I know that, because you were part of that choice and so was I. It stinks to have to choose against people, because I liked both choices, but I still had to choose one. So let's be done with that as much as possible, and let's move on. Let's work on this together. I promise to listen fully to everyone's opinion, and then I also promise to do what I feel is best for the district as a whole. But I can't promise that I'm going to do exactly what one neighborhood wants. I will listen to them. I'll even give them priority in my listening because it's in their neighborhood. I can't promise that I'm going to give in to every demand. I just can't. That's not what board members' jobs are. Now, I get that we have to advocate for our different areas, but I also, my bigger job is to advocate for the district as a whole. So let's stop arguing about who doesn't trust who and who doesn't like who, and let's do this. Can we do this?
You'll have to ask the neighborhood.
I would like to ask that neighborhood and all the neighborhoods. Is that okay?
I just want to clarify, I'm not trying to argue with anyone about any of this, but there are some realities to the decision that the board made. And I want us to be very upfront with each other as well as with the public who's watching, maybe, or if they're all asleep. There are realities to the decision that we made. I don't have any interest in sabotaging something that's going to go into a building that's in my neighborhood. I have zero interest in doing that. I also don't think that my neighborhood should be the one that makes the final decisions on what happens in that building. I think they should have some sway. I think they should have some input. I don't think that we need to be the ones to make the final decision. But we are facing an uphill battle, and I just want to make sure that when we're making these decisions that we are thinking about these things. I am not trying to say that we're horrible people and the board is all horrible people and that the trust issue. The only reason I bring up trust issues is because they're going to play into whatever happens in that building. And we need to be prepared to confront those now. And as you guys are trying to understand, we've had some things thrown around and we're trying to understand what's happening in the neighborhood and what would be good for the neighborhood. I want everyone to know that I very much appreciate that people are asking me and asking my neighborhood what wants to go in there. I appreciate that, and I don't know that we've been, in my opinion and my personal feelings, I don't know that that's happened as much in the past, but I feel like we're trying to do that. I think that there's a bigger picture here that we're going to have to confront, and it has to do with my neighborhood, and it has to do with the whole dang district. Do I think that we need to focus on that, and then that's what we need to be looking at as we move forward? No. But we need to be realistic about the way that we are viewed by the public, not just my neighborhood. And all of that is going to play into what happens, because I don't think we can pass a bond. I have to be honest, I don't think we can pass a bond. And if we take it to, and then we could do an MBA, but then what does that do to future boards? Then there's just so many pieces here. And I apologize if I have come off as combative or argumentative or bringing up all the trust issues. I want what's best for this district as a whole. And then I have been elected to represent my neighborhood. And so I don't think in the past anyway, our voices have been heard, and part of that is that we needed someone at the table. So I am just here. The only thing I'm trying to do is to help you understand what's happening in my neighborhood. I am not making demands. I am not trying to sabotage anything. But I think we need to be realistic about what's happened and what's happening. And then, yes, I would love to heal this. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot. Does that mean we need to stop this project? No. But we have some realities based on decisions that past boards have made and that this board has made that we need to move forward with. So I think that we need to think about these things, but I don't think we need to focus on them. I don't think we need to be like, let's talk about all the trust issues, but they're going to come up. And so I thought it would be better to bring it up at the beginning of the process so we know what we're facing and you guys can have a better understanding of what's happening in my neighborhood. And I recognize, but again, my neighborhood isn't gonna have the final say, nor should they. But we have problems, and again, this is not new, this is not the first time I brought this up. But I do think that we need to move forward, like Rebecca said. But we need to move forward recognizing that we have baggage that we gotta take care of.
Can we talk about the possibility of having a bond? You know, you keep talking about that, and that, I just want to say out loud, is probably the most terrifying part of this entire thing, because I lived through the last 2 bonds, and they were horrid. They're awful to be a board member during a bond. It is horrendous. And you are correct. There's not going to be another way around it. If we decide we want to keep that building, which that's what I want, and if we want to use it for district purposes, which is what I want, it's going to end up that we're going to have to put money into it. And the way that that's going to happen is it's going to have to be through a bond. I will publicly state right now, I will do it. I will bond. I don't know what our chances are. I know they're a little bit more slim based on our history. But if that is the way to keep the building and put it to good use and have it be the best use for the long term, which is what we have to really focus on. There are short-term solutions to that building, but that's silly. We need to focus on the best long-term solution. Then it's a bond. And I'm willing to put myself through being a board member on a bond yet again if I have to. Well, we need to strategize and do it at the right time and all these things, yes. And maybe that means we have to leave that building vacant for a year or 2 or maybe 3. I don't know what that means, but if we're looking at the long-term solution, we may have to deal with some things that are not as good in the short term. But let's say it out loud. It's going to mean a bond or an MBA, which I don't know if an MBA is the best way, but that's what it means. But I'm willing to try for it and to figure out how to get it done.
I don't see any other way either, to be honest.
P.S. That's not a promise. That's not a fact, or that's just a forecast of what will probably have to happen in the future. There's no timeline on that. That's not a guarantee. Whatever. Just saying.
I see in both of these last topics of conversation, it goes back to the value I see in involving the community in this whole discussion that we're going to be having over the next year or so. Whether it's a facility advisory committee with people from every boundary in our district. I'm thinking, and it's just brainstorming as it comes to me saying it out loud, but you know, going to a Dixon neighborhood meeting and saying, hey, we're starting to talk about this. We want input. I think communication and involving people is a great way to show, number one, that we care, that we're listening, that we want involvement, and hopefully to rebuild some trust with people. I'm sincere about wanting to involve the Dixon neighborhood and all of our patrons in this process, but we then need to take the actual steps to show, because I think sometimes we fall short on that. And I'm not necessarily speaking anything specific, but just for myself personally, like, oh, I should reach out to people, and then I come to the next meeting, like, oh, I never reached out to anybody in the meantime to ask, you know, so I'm going to work on that, and I think we can work as a system, too, to make sure that we're involving people in the process, but I think maybe going to a Dixon neighborhood meeting and starting to talk about it and being proactive and reaching out that way could be a good thing there.
I agree with that.
Okay, I think we've had a really good discussion here, a good start. Well, I think we've had a good starting point. This is definitely far from over, but we have gotten a lot of good input here, and I'm ready to keep moving forward and in the right direction. So, sounds like maybe the first thing I would suggest that we could do as a board is to ask the facilities to meet and prioritize what their needs are. and what they could see using that building for. That would be our first step.
But besides that, can we also add into that, though, besides just knowing the needs, can we also get Mark to give us all the details we're gonna need to know, like what parts are habitable, what parts, all those
What the question that
physical
Gina brought
facility
up.
things, right? All
Yeah.
the physical things about the facility, the details that we're gonna need to know that's gonna play into everything else. Huge third.
And then I think
again.
when we get that information, we'll put it on another study session and go from there to make the next decision. Does that sound good? Great.
I think it's too early for me to do any outreach to any of those groups that we talked about a couple of years ago that were interested in that building, but at some point it's going to come up. Board members are going to probably want to know or community members may want to know, is there still interest? Because with the United Way or with Boys and Girls Club, in particular that one, there was potentially money attached to that which could assist in a renovation. So, I mean, I'd be happy to reach out informally, but any discussion that begins will be perceived as formal anyway. So I want to be careful that I'm not getting ahead of the board on this one.
Okay. Any further discussion on this? Okay. The next part is a discussion on board evaluation. Just like we did an evaluation on our business administrator and superintendent, this is something that's never been done since I've been on the board, but this will be similar. Richard Stoll will send us an email where you will evaluate how you feel the board is doing. And then in February, we will have an open discussion at our retreat to discuss the findings. I just need to know, as a board, are you in favor of doing this and going forward?
Yeah.
Okay.
I am too.
Sure.
Sounds like a great tool
Okay.
to help
Is
us.
it gonna take a half an hour?
It'll be similar.
Answer 100 questions?
It's not as many. I think it's only like 45 questions each time. Yeah,
It's
no.
the same tool. like,
Same
it's the
format, same
tool,
format
right?
where you kind of have a scale of where you feel like they land. And then Richard Stoll will come in and facilitate that conversation in February.
Can we ask, I liked adding that don't know button. Can we ask for that ahead of time?
I can ask for that.
If that can be an option on it?
Okay. Any further discussion on that? Okay. The next part is for policy 6900 and consent calendar approval. Derek, do you want to explain why we're doing this again?
Yep. So unfortunately, on our last business meeting, it did not get saved on the public notice website when we noticed made a notice for the meeting. And so what we're going to have to do is reapprove and essentially confirm and essentially revote on those actions to validate them. And so that is all we'll be doing is just revalidating those votes and having it noticed properly in the public meeting, so that way it becomes a valid board action.
Any further questions about that?
I have to go. I won't be here. I'm in favor of both. Do I need to, can I do that? from
We've
afar, or
got a
does it
quorum.
matter?
We have a
enough
quorum,
people?
so we
Okay.
can make the vote. So.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
Happy
Rebecca.
Tuesday, everybody.
All right. Go ahead, Nate.
No, I'm just ready to vote.
Okay,
so-
well, we have to adjourn, and then we have to open a new business meeting, so it'll be just a second.
Okay.
Okay, so.
I was just unmuting for that.
Okay. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn the study session.
Okay. Okay, we are done with our study session. We need we're staying on the same YouTube, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just rolling. Yeah.
All right. Good morning. It is Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. We're convened as the Provo City School District Board of Education at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. The time is currently 8:40 a.m. We will begin with a roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Jennifer Partridge, board member.
Gina Hales, board member.
Nate.
Nate Bryson, board member.
Terry McCabe, board member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Patel, Superintendent.
All right, is there a motion to convene?
I move we convene the business meeting.
All right. Okay, next we need to approve the policy 6900 discussed in the study session. Keith, you want to just briefly discuss that?
This is simply a policy that was created to provide some planning and assurances for schools that are right now hovering around a very small student population level. Since last time, Board Member McCabe was at the meeting, Derek was at the meeting, Jason Cox. We had a meeting this past, what was it, Tuesday, I think. Wednesday, whatever it was sometime recently, with the 3 elementary principals who were, last week, okay. 3 elementary principals who are potentially affected by this, and so we're discussing it and also working on a procedure. So the board's familiar with this from having discussed this a couple times now, so I recommend your approval.
Right. Is there a motion on this?
I move that we approve policy 6900 as discussed in the study session.
All right. Is there a motion made by Board Member Partridge? Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Board Member Hale. Is there any further discussion on this policy? All right, seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye.
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 Any opposed? The motion passes unanimously. Next, we need to approve the consent calendar. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent calendar.
Motion made by Board Member Partridge. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by Board Member Hale. Is there any further discussion on the consent calendar? Seeing none, all those in favor indicate with aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
So the motion passes unanimously. We've come to the end of our meeting. We thank everyone for being here this morning. And is there a motion to adjourn the business meeting?
So moved.
All right. Thank you for being here.